Well, thank you for joining us today. Today we have Eric Rittmeyer. You are the Director of Business Development for LifeMed, one of many things that you are. So tell us a little bit about your background and all the things that you do.
Yeah, it's funny, Amanda. Like, I am not a medical person. I have no medical training, right? So I just developed this very deep obsession with women's health as director. Yeah.
First off, come and say thank you for that.
100%. Yes. I just love it, and it's wild because as director of business development, going out and promoting the business, I again, without having any type of medical training, I didn't know what a red blood cell was a few years ago.
Sure.
So I had to learn about all this stuff. I still don't know what a red blood cell is, by the way. But I had to learn all this stuff. So as I was going out there and speaking at these events and meeting all these people, mainly working with women and meeting women, they were all saying the same exact thing. It was hot flashes, night sweats, brain fog, insomnia, hair thinning, weight gain, sexual vitality, vaginal atrophy, vaginas. So I go back to our medical director, who's a cardiologist, and I'm like, hey, can you help me out? Like, I'm trying to educate myself on hormones. I'm meeting all these women. I think it's menopause related. I can't find any information. Like, I'm scratching my head here. Like, I can't find anything. So he kind of laughed a little bit, and he's like, hey, it's hard to find. There's not a lot out there. So that's what led to all my research.
And how many years ago was this?
This was I guess it's about 5 years ago.
So 2020, still very little research on something that affects literally every woman.
It is the only universal female medical experience. Every single woman will go through menopause, either naturally due to age, chemically due to treatment, or surgically due to hysterectomy. So if you have something that every woman goes through, if you have a very good idea of symptoms attributable to menopause,
right?
And then most importantly, if we have therapies that are available to help not just mitigate symptoms, but also to provide long-term protection, bone health, brain health, heart health. So if you have this very major disruptor to quality of life, and if you have a fairly simple solution, being HRT, I'm sure we'll talk about, big problem, simple solution, help me, I only have a partially functioning frontal lobe over here.
The math isn't mathin'.
It's not
mathin'. Why is there nothing on it? It's mind-blowing to me.
It really is. And it got, for me, this is where my whole obsession began. And again, as a guy, as a non-medical person, I couldn't believe this. And for me, it was like, okay, I have to get a better understanding of why there's this gap. And the more I researched, the more I studied, the more I got into this, I was like, this is wild. Like, it's just this total lack of available information. Women are just pushed through this. They're deprived of quality of life and unnecessarily. So that's where my obsession began. And from there, it just got into researching and talking to people and understanding. And now it's the minute I wake up to the minute I go to bed, I'm reading something that pertains to ovarian dysfunction or something related to women's health. I'm in love with the topic.
So to back up a little bit, you first started out in life as a Marine. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Baltimore.
Good old Baltimore.
So Baltimore, hun.
Baltimore.
Not everybody says water and up air and all. It's like, it's not a washing machine. There's no R in washing. It's washing machine. So I was not school was not my thing. I went to school to play lacrosse and football.
Seriously?
It was so bad. And then when it got down to like my junior year, I'm like, I have to figure something out. Like, this is not going to work for me.
Grow up,
yeah. Like, what am I going to do? So I knew I wanted to go in the military, and I decided on the Marine Corps, and it was the absolute best decision I ever made. I'm one of those weirdos that feels like every single person should serve their country. And not that it has to be military service, just
service in some regard.
National service. Exactly right. If you're on the East Coast, go to the West Coast, West Coast, go to the East Coast, learn to deal with people that you don't know, how to handle an opposing point of view, how to deal with adversity, how to accomplish a mission, to understand cohesiveness and, all these things, camaraderie, all the things that the military instills in you. So it was the absolute best thing I did. And then when I got out of the Marine Corps, I got into sales and speaking of mental toughness. So I have like all these different, there's just nothing that makes sense with any trajectory. It's wild for me, but
just throwing it all at the wall.
It's like, that's what we do in the Marine Corps, right? It's just jack of all trades.
So you have 2 books. So your first book, tell me about that one.
Yeah, it's called The Emotional Marine. So it's on critical thinking, objective reality. It's basically on how to get people to instantly like you. It sounds kind of silly, but I went through the majority of my life not knowing what it was that I was born with or blessed with, whatever you want to call it. And it took me until probably like my early 20s to recognize that my skill or my talent or my gift was people.
Right.
Like I could connect with them. I was very good at diffusing hostile situations. I connected with a lot of people. I didn't have, all my relationships were very deep. Like everyone I meet, I have a deep relationship with. So for me, it was just all about writing a book to help other people to deepen relationships, strengthen relationships, and mainly to just teach people how to remain in control of emotion. And I love that. I still love speaking on mental toughness and emotional intelligence, but I only have so much brain capacity up in this cranium of mine. It's a very large cranium, but limited amounts of expendable mental energy. So it's really, again, shifted into the women's stuff and just really health overall for men and for women.
Yeah.
But the women's stuff for me is just where I just can't get enough of it.
Wow. Yeah. So I think it's so funny because it's like the titles of both of your books are like opposites, right? Emotional Marine, right? Those two things don't always come together. And then your second book is the Menopause Marine, which I think is the first time I saw it, I was like, I think we were at Rally for First Responders, and it was at all the amazing merch that LifeMed gives out. I think it was part of it, and I remember getting a copy of it, and I was like, what's this? And I was like, this is awesome.
It was very intentional, Amanda. I named those that way for a reason, right? So it's like whenever I meet anyone, and it's the same way at events, my book's set up there, whatever, and it's always a woman who walks up, it's hand on book, and she's like, what's a guy know about menopause? And I respect that. It's funny when I bring staff out with me these events, I always prep them for it. I'm like, hey,
this was going to happen.
Just so you know, because a lot of them start to defend me because these women come at me kind of hard.
Oh, sure.
And my staff defends me. They're like, don't you talk to them that way? So I have to let them know that, hey, these women are going to come at me.
Yeah.
And it's not a lot. It's enough. But I will say this, 99% of the time, once I explain to them what the purpose is for my book and why I'm so into this, 99% of the time, like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times they're thinking that I'm going to be like, man, I get a lot of mansplaining, like you're mansplaining.
Yeah.
I get a lot. They think that that's what it's going to be. And then once they recognize like, hey, this is just basically this guy's research in a topic that has really received very minimal oxygen. And it's my fact-based, no medical training. So it gives me the ability to be very objective.
Right.
I don't have any medical training that might prevent me from seeing data that conflicts with how I was trained. Right. So it's like for a lot of people, and not just doctors, anyone, once we learn about something, once we're trained on something, if we do it for a long time, when we see data that conflicts with our thoughts on something, it's hard to override what we feel in our hearts, right?
Oh, yeah.
And we become strong. And with menopause and with hormone replacement therapies, it is a very, very emotional topic that a lot of times logic kind of goes out the window and all we care about is what we feel strongly in our heart. And that's a dangerous place to be.
It can be, definitely. So let's dive into it. Tell me a little bit about your book, about the Menopause Marine.
Yeah, it is about 3 years of my research. It is all things relating to menopause. A significant portion of that is a study that was done back in 2002 called the Women's Health Initiative. So to date, still the largest randomized controlled trial specifically on women's health. It was a $675 million study conducted by the National Institute of Health. And the takeaway from that study was if you're a woman taking HRT, hormone replacement therapies, you increase your risk of breast cancer by 25%.
Which is what always has stood out in my mind, right? Like as a woman who has familial history of breast cancer, it always made me think, well, that's just off the table.
That's exactly right.
We can't do that.
That's exactly right.
But I think that study has been, I don't want to say debunked, demythed, but I think they found that there were significant issues with that
There
study.
sure were. And what's happening now, the data in the study hasn't changed, obviously. It's viewing it through a lens that allows people to actually take the study for what it really was. The big problem with this is very high level. They went on camera. They shut the study down a couple of years early. They went on camera before it's called peer review. So when a study's done, it's peer reviewed before they put out the findings. No peer review. They go on camera. They say that it increases breast cancer by 25%. Understandably, HRT prescriptions plummet, off by 85%. Back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, it was very commonplace. If you're a woman going through menopause, take HRT. It was called conjugated equine estrogen. You might have heard of Premarin before.
Yeah.
Do you know what Premarin stands for by any chance?
No.
This is not a joke when I say this. Premarin actually stands for pregnant mare urine.
Oh.
So the form of estrogen that was used in that study.
Horse pee.
Pregnant horse pee.
Oh,
yeah.
great.
So the estrogen, great news. We don't use pee from pregnant horse anymore.
I don't have that right
exactly
now.
right. But it's called conjugated equine estrogen, and then they use what's called medroxyprogesterone acetate, which is a synthetic form of progesterone. So the study basically, everybody freaked out. Everybody stopped prescribing HRT. Women backed off of it. We now know decades later that was not accurate information. The increased risk in breast cancer was extremely minimal. And by minimal, I'm talking about 0.10% increased risk. And that was for women who had an intact uterus who were taking estrogen and progesterone. So for ladies who have not had hysterectomies, if you're ever prescribed estrogen, you have to take progesterone with it.
Okay.
You never take estrogen unopposed. It can actually thicken the lining of your uterus and lead to what's called endometrial hyperplasia. So if you're taking HRT and you're taking estrogen with an intact uterus, you also have to take progesterone. Mm-hmm. Well, the study had about 28,000 women in it. Approximately 14,000 with intact uterus taking estrogen and progesterone, approximately 14,000 women without uterus who had hysterectomies who were taking estrogen alone.
Without the progesterone.
Correct. So if you've had a hysterectomy, you do not need to take progesterone with the estrogen. You have no uterus, therefore you don't have to worry about the thickening of your uterus. You can take estrogen, but it's just not required. So for the women in that part of the study, there was actually a 25% decreased risk in breast cancer.
Wow. Okay.
And that's not even the craziest stuff. What's really crazy is, from a woman's standpoint, the number one leading cause of death for women's cardiovascular disease.
Sure.
So as women, you're 8 to 10 times more likely to die of cardiovascular disease than you are breast cancer. Take nothing away from breast cancer. It's disgusting. It's horrible. I hate it. We all know someone who has been impacted by it. It's horrible. Take nothing away from it. But if we really, really want to help women live longer, we have to educate them on health of the heart. And with loss of estrogen increases risk of heart disease, bone disease, and brain disease. Osteoporosis is such a deadly disease that gets no oxygen.
And like I work with the elderly population, and the devastating effects of a hip fracture are so significant. Like, I mean, you could really, like, in quarters, right? Like 25% can return back to normal life, 25% return back with some limitation, 25% are wheelchair bedbound, 25% die.
I'll give you the stat you already know this, I'm ridiculous. Sure. You're 65 and over, you fall and have a hip fracture that requires surgery. There is a 30% chance you will not survive 1 year following surgery. If you're lucky enough to be one of the 70% who do survive that year, about 50% of them lose one metric of mobility, like you're saying. Goes to being bedridden or from a cane to a wheelchair. It is a very, very deadly disease that doesn't get any attention whatsoever. Estrogen is the number one hormone to protect the bones. Skeletal muscle mass, weight training, lifting weights. Every single woman has to be lifting very heavy weights.
And I think people just see that as like, oh, it's a consequence of getting older, but it doesn't have to be.
It most certainly does not. And this is with HRT. And I think a lot of people, especially women who have been shooed through a system, it's like, move on. Yeah. Sorry about your luck, right? I mean, from a woman's standpoint, you think about it, lots of education on how not to get pregnant. Lots of education on how to get pregnant when you're ready for that. And then a little bit of information how to feed your child after they're born. Aside from that, keep it moving. Sorry about your luck. Exactly right. So you have these women who go through it. There's no education there. And then when you talk about estrogen protecting the bones, also the brain, we didn't talk about the brain. 2/3 Alzheimer's patients are women. Yeah. Could it be that abrupt loss of estrogen that leads to what's called CSVD, cerebral small vessel disease? But most importantly, the heart. Again, 19 million people die worldwide every single year from heart disease. Wow. Worldwide, nationwide, men, women, the number one leading cause of death. We can almost totally eliminate it. From a woman's standpoint, this is what's so crazy about estrogen. Women have about a 10-year heart protection over men. So if you're 30, you have the heart of a 20-year-old man, 40, heart of a 30-year-old man. By the time you reach the age of 65 as a woman, that flips. You now become more susceptible to what's called ASCVD, atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. Mm-hmm. Thought process there is 51's average age for menopause, loss of estrogen, those 10, 15 years, exactly right. Now you have this atherosclerosis that builds up. You're now at higher risk for heart disease. We can almost totally eradicate heart disease. It's the only inevitable disease of our species. Every single one of us will die with some form of heart disease, not always because of it, but with it. There's actually autopsies that are done on kids who die unrelated deaths, car accidents, suicides, overdoses, whatever. They'll do autopsies on these kids in their teens, early teens. They'll see the beginning stages of ASCVD in these kids.
Oh, wow.
It's a disease that's extremely deadly, and it's almost totally preventable.
Wow.
So women losing estrogen increases that risk significantly. Pink ribbons for the breast, there need to be red ribbons for the heart too.
Yeah. And I mean, it just blows my mind that there's such a strong connection to all these things. And yet we as women don't know. Let me speak for myself. I, as a woman, didn't know all the links until like I started doing research and listening to podcasts, and like, women are finally starting to talk about this more, at least in obviously in my age, in my circle. And it's just amazing that there just isn't the knowledge and the help out there. Like if you go through your traditional pathways, right? Like you go to your OBGYN and you're like, this is what's going on. The typical treatment is, okay, well, let's do some tests. Okay, your test came back. You seem fine. Your numbers are fine. They're within range. You should be good.
Stop eating chocolate chip cookies. Don't drink wine. Take anxiety medication.
Right.
I think it's important to understand what a doctor's job is. And I swore I was not going to write a third book. I just started writing one. And it does not come naturally to me. It's like writing crayon. You know what I mean? So it's not natural for me. But the title of my book is called "It's Not Your Doctor's Fault." And the whole premise of my book is to help people to understand that your doctor's job, what they go to school to do, is they learn to treat you when you're ill. Broken bone, sore throat, whatever it is.
Right.
I talk to so many people that get so upset with their doctors. Like, I go to my doctor, all they want to do is write a prescription, because doctors are very reactive. You are broke, you go to them, they fix you.
Right.
That's not a bad thing. It's a wonderful thing.
A plus B is C. This is what we do.
We prescribe medication, right? This is basically what's doubled our lifespan in the last 100 or so years, mainly due to the advent of antibiotics. Right. So if we recognize that our doctor's job is to treat, we can then take responsibility to do everything we can preventatively so we don't have to be treated. So we're proactive instead of reactive. So from a doctor standpoint, if we understand this, when we go to our doctors for whatever reason, but especially for women, we can now understand that they're looking for something that's very broken. And as it relates to menopause, there's nothing that's broken.
Yeah, right. There's nothing that just is overtly like, that's it.
There's a combination of things. We're going to see loss of estrogen. We're going to see hormones, follicle stimulating hormone, things go up. But most doctors aren't trained to look for that stuff. And it baffles my brain. Again, you have something every woman goes through. Why is there not a specialist for menopause? Right. There's a urologist, there's a neurologist, there's an endocrinologist. Why isn't there a menopausologist? Right? I mean, honestly,
menopausologist. I like that.
Remember I'm a Marine, right? I mean, come on. So, but why isn't there a specialty for this stuff? So I think it's important to note that, doctors are doing what they're trained to do, which is treating. It's our job to prevent. And we do that through education. And for women, this all starts with education. And that really is my purpose, to just arm women with information to be able to make decisions in combination with your doctors. No one should allow their doctors to make 100% of their medical decisions for them. Men, women, young, old, sick, healthy, doesn't matter. We should have some input. Yeah. Now, again, 1%, 2%, 5%, whatever, we should be educated. So that way, when a doctor makes a recommendation based on our own research, we're able to make a decision in conjunction with them, with our loved ones, our spouses, or our kids, or whatever. As it relates to menopause, there are no resources, or very limited resources, for women to obtain fact-based information.
Yeah, that was my next question. How do we educate ourselves on this topic?
Yeah, my book's a great place for that. Obviously, that's why
I'm gonna definitely give you a plug. The Menopause Marine. You can buy it on Amazon. It's also probably available at your local LifeMed.
You can come grab a free copy. I'd love to get a free copy at LifeMed. I'm joking when I say it. There are places. There's other books out there, but I think what's important, Amanda, is to recognize that we have to educate on whatever topic. It doesn't matter what it is. If we're going to buy a car, we're going to educate ourselves on the type of vehicle. If we're looking to do home improvements, we're going to do all this stuff. As it relates to health, especially, it's very, very important for women, because the medical system is just very ill-equipped to help women going through that stage of life. And the crazy thing about menopause is, there's a safe window for when women, it's safest for women to start hormone replacement therapies. Generally speaking, 60 years old or younger, less than 10 years postmenopausal. The studies, the Women's Health Initiative didn't find that's the safest time to initiate HRT. Okay. Estrogen's very good at preventing. It's not good at treating. So it's all about timing of initiation.
So for folks I think especially my generation, we started birth control. Most of us, I'll speak for myself. I started birth control probably
in your teens.
In my mid to late teens. Was on that till I had my son. Got off of it while I had my son. I was off of it for a couple years. Started back on it, and then got off of it again. And I think it wasn't until I got off of it again until then I was like, oh. What is going on? So what symptoms should people start looking at, or maybe when would be a good time to start thinking about it?
Optimally, in my world, I would be educating women in their very early 30s. Yeah. And by educating, I'm not talking about getting way in the depth, right? My daughters are 23 and 21. I talk about ovarian dysfunction and vaginal atrophy, and they're like, What's for dinner tonight? Like, and I'm partially joking, but I'm acclimating them to it, right? So I feel like optimally women in their early 30s, I think that's an age where women can. So if I talk to my daughters in their 20s, menopause isn't even remotely on their radar.
Not even close on your radar.
And
they're thinking about having babies instead of post babies.
100%.
Yeah.
I feel like by the age of 30-ish, women at that point are starting to recognize, okay, this is something that is going to happen. Yeah. At that age, also, they're probably seeing their mothers go through it. And I got to tell you, there's a very, very big breakdown for conversations with mothers and daughters. Most women I work with, they don't have those conversations.
I don't think my mother ever talked about, well, she had a hysterectomy kind of young, so her process was probably a little bit different, but like never a conversation.
It doesn't come up. And hysterectomy is another topic I do want to talk about before we're done, because that's a very dangerous thing, especially for women who lose their ovaries. It's called a bilateral oophorectomy. I want to talk about that. But I want to get some definitions out real quick, because a lot of dangerous information is mainly, I'm too young for menopause. And critically important to note, there is no age that's too young. If you've had your first period, any day after that, a woman could go through menopause.
Right.
If that happens prior to the age of 40, it's actually a medical condition called POI, premature ovarian insufficiency. Yeah. Only about 2 to 5% of the population will suffer from that. But for women to understand, 43 is average age for what's defined as perimenopause.
Hi.
I didn't want to call you. I wasn't going to say anything.
I'm all in it. Let me tell you. Ask my husband.
43 is average age for perimenopause. It can happen anytime. It doesn't have to be, it could be younger than that. It could be older than that. 43 is average age. The number one thing we normally see is inconsistent periods, length, severity, duration, anything that's out of the norm. So if it's anything different than what you're used to, normally that's the number one sign. From there, about 85% of perimenopausal women will exhibit what's called vasomotor symptoms. These are the hot flashes and night sweats. It's actually your pituitary gland. It's actually your hypothalamus that's responsible for that. So it's very estrogen sensitive. So about 85% of women will have those symptoms. 51 is average age for menopause. Technically, menopause is 1 day.
Right. It's the day you stop.
The 12th month.
It's like 1 month post period, or
12 months.
1 year post.
Correct.
Period.
So when you've had 12 consecutive months back to back to back, 12 consecutive months, that day technically is menopause. So it's really 1 day. So all the months leading up to it, perimenopause, 12 months of no period, that day's menopause. Yeah. Every day after that's postmenopause. Well, the average woman spends a third of her life in postmenopausal years.
That's great.
It's wild, right? And that loss of estrogen when you go through menopause is not just catastrophic for the bones, for the brain, for the heart. There's a whole emotional component to this as well. Quality of life. It's so crazy because we talk so much about dangers of taking medication, but we don't talk a lot about dangers of not taking medication.
100%.
And as it relates to HRT especially, I'm not going to sit here and say that every single woman's a candidate for it, but 100% of women are owed fact-based information on HRT, and that's very non-existent. So it's important to note that there is no age that's too young. If you're going to your doctor and they're saying you're too young for it, that's just not accurate information, because it can happen at any time. Right. Once you start going through it, there are lots of things that you should be doing to be proactive to hopefully soften once you get into the actual 12th month of no period. Okay.
So what is that... what are some of those things that we should be doing on that preventative end that we're starting in perimenopause?
I talk about how obsessed I am with menopause. And I got to tell you, probably next on that list is obsessing over educating women on muscle, skeletal muscle mass.
Which I will say, another thing that women have always been told not to do, right? We should be small. We should be thin. We should not be big and strong.
Cardio.
Like, ooh, she looks like a man. No.
Not going to happen.
Yeah.
Women have to be lifting heavy weights. And by heavy weights, I'm talking 8 to 10 reps.
Progressive overload, all the things.
You need to be burned out between 8 and 10, whatever exercise you're doing. Now, very important to note, you have to be healthy enough. Make sure you're healthy enough. Right. Don't jump in from never working out and going in
and then lifting
doing
50-pound dumbbells. Yeah.
Not smart to do. But it's extremely, extremely important. Women have to understand that the more muscle you can build, this is called sarcopenia. So as we age, it's a gradual involuntary loss of muscle. The goal for women and for men too, but mainly for women, the goal is to maintain as much muscle as possible. So you want to front load that muscle. So when you get into your 40s and 50s, when the hormones start to fluctuate, you have this huge backlog of muscle that once you start pulling from it, it's not as bad as starting off with no muscle, then pulling from that.
Trying to gain it back.
That's exactly right. A lot of ladies don't know this too, Amanda. Believe it or not, testosterone is actually a woman's dominant hormone. A lot of ladies don't know that. As a woman,
learned that.
You've learned that, yes.
Through LifeMed.
Through LifeMed. It's wild. A lot of women don't know that. It's actually
I can't
significant.
take testosterone. That's a man's thing.
Yeah, you don't want
no.
Adam's apples and hairy chest and clitoral enlargement. I mean, come on. Doesn't everybody want this stuff? There's so many misconceptions about it, but believe it or not, there's no FDA indication for women for testosterone. So if it gets dosed, if it gets prescribed, it's actually written off label. That's going to be changing hopefully soon with Dr. McCary, the new head of the FDA, which they're actually, it's amazing. And they're removing some warning labels from hormones too. That's very much in process as well. But to go back to this is called backcasting, right? So what we all have to do is think about these things that we want to do at any period in life, when we're 40, when we're 50, when we're 60, and we have to work backwards off of that. And there's certain levels that we should be at right now. Like I'm 52. I'm starting to think about these things. Like as silly as it sounds, I want to be able to get on the floor with my grandkids,
100%, yeah.
Pick them up. I want to be able to take a jar of peanut butter and open the lid.
I want to be able to carry my own groceries.
That's exactly right.
Like
these simple
the
things.
little things.
That's it. They're little now, right? But when we get to that stage, so there are certain things that we need to be doing right now to maximize the possibility that will happen. One of the tests I would recommend for you and all the listeners here, it's the farmer's carry test. If you've ever heard about this before. So basically you take a woman, and for men as well, in your 5th decade of life. So basically in your 40s, you should be able to take 75% of your total body weight and carry that in a farmer's carry. So keep numbers simple. You weigh 100 pounds, 75%, that's 75 pounds. You should be able to take 37.5 pounds in each hand and walk with that for 1 minute. For men, full body weight for 1 minute. So if you weigh 200 pounds, you should be able to take 100 pounds in each hand, walk for 1 minute. If you're able to do that, there's a pretty high probability that you have sufficient amounts of muscle that's going to carry you into your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. If you can't do that for 1 minute, back down the weight until you get to the point where you can go for 1 minute, keep building it up. The goal here is not just the fact that you have a strong forearm, right? Because people think I'll get one of the squeezy things and just do this all day long. No. The whole goal with this test is if you have enough strength to carry that much weight for that long, most likely you have full body muscle.
Strength.
There's something
your core,
you've been doing.
Your legs, everything's
exactly right. So that's a great test for everyone to do. But long answer to your question, the skeletal muscle mass that is very, very, very high on that list of important things for women to be doing. Lowering your BMI, not smoking, exercising, monitoring all your different panels, all your lipid panels. Thyroid's a huge issue for women, gets so misdiagnosed. But it would probably be the muscle, I would say.
Right, because I hear so often from people, they're like, oh, all this hormone stuff, it's not covered by my insurance, it's too expensive, but there's so many things you can do that don't cost anything. Doesn't cost anything to go pick up some weights.
100%, yes.
Theoretically, it doesn't cost anything, but it doesn't cost.
Now, another important thing to note, right, because this is another thing I get quite a bit of, and for a lot of women, they're like, Eric, I don't want to do anything. I want to be very natural, all natural. I hear this all the time. Right. And it's important to emphasize the easiest way to explain this is your hormones were here, now they're here. When you go on HRT, what we're doing is replenishing those hormones back to physiologic levels. We're not hyperdosing you, and we're giving you what's called bioidentical hormones. So molecule for molecule, these are designed to match almost exactly what your body makes endogenously in the ovaries. We're not using horse urine anymore. So
I really appreciate that. I really do.
If you really want it, I know a guy. And actually, crazy, believe it or not, there's actually the synthetic forms of estrogen still are that form of horse urine, believe it or not, which is still prescribed.
Lord knows if I have it or not then.
Exactly.
I may have it, I don't know it.
Who knows? Yeah. But it's all about understanding when it's safest to initiate that. I'm gonna give you an example of this real quick. So we had a patient, she's 91 years old. She's been on HRT since she was 51.
Oh, wow.
40 years on HRT. Her daughter's 62 years old, not on HRT. They had a DEXA scan done. It's a bone density. You've heard of DEXA scan before. The mom who's 91 has better bone density than the daughter who's 62.
Well, there's proof right there for you, huh?
That's exactly right. Wow. And you look at they're called calcium scores, coronary artery calcium scores. It's a test that's done to look for calcification in your heart. These are all things women have to be hyper sensitive to, again, because remember, estrogen's all about timing of initiation. If you start at the right time, there's no study that shows that a woman should ever stop taking estrogen. Monitor blood, make sure nothing crazy happens. It's all about that initiation. If you start at the right time, look at any study that's been done, it will show the protection that's given mainly to the heart.
So for women that have, let's say, already have some damage to their heart, what would be good for them? Like, could they start taking like an estrogen type based
It all
formula?
depends on, sure. So everything starts with blood panels, right? Obviously with LifeMed, we're crazy about this.
I love the amount of, I'm a huge data nerd, so I love the amount of data that you get from the blood panel.
It's a
at
lot,
LifeMed.
right? It's 100 markers, hormones, genetics,
I love it.
cardiac particle sizes, metabolic, kidney, liver function, glucose levels, thyroid levels, inflammation markers, vitamins. We check it all. So you most certainly want to do that first. So for a woman who has some cardiovascular disease, let's say, for a woman who might not be overall healthy, there are some women who are not candidates for HRT, right? If you have pulmonary embolism history, deep vein thrombosis, blood clotting disorders, active forms of cancer, these are things that might preclude you from being a candidate for HRT, but it all starts with that blood panel.
Right.
Meeting with that provider is going to help them to see everything that's happening internally, and then deciding on, are you a candidate? Is it safe for you? What the studies did find, what that Women's Health Initiative did find, for women who were outside of that, so basically 60 years old or older, more than 10 years postmenopausal, it was really the 1 year after reinitiation that there was some risk for.
Okay.
And a lot of that had to deal with the route of administration. There's different ways you can take hormones. Creams, pills, sublinguals, injections, pellets. The study did find that for women who were taking it orally, that there was some increased risk, mainly for blood clotting, but only that year after they initiated it. Okay. So again, it goes back to timing of initiation. This is where it's dangerous for women, because if they don't understand hormones, if they haven't been educated on it, someone comes to us who's 63.
And just like pops them something, yeah.
Exactly right. We have to be very cautious of that. So it all starts with that blood panel, making sure. So right off the bat, there's very few women who are just flat out not candidates for HRT. The blood work is going to determine whether or not it's going to be safest for you. And that's a conversation you're going to have with one of our providers or your GYN or whoever's pulling your blood.
Yeah. So if someone's questioning, like, what are some of the common symptoms and maybe a little bit less common symptoms that folks might be experiencing if they're in the perimenopause phase?
Hot flashes, night sweats, brain fog, insomnia, hair thinning, weight gain, sexual vitality, vaginal atrophy, vaginal dryness, urinary tract infections, heart palpitations, skin irritations, emotional disturbances, weight redistribution in the mid region, itchy ear, frozen shoulder.
Someone was we had dinner with a friend, and she was like, my ears are itching me so bad. And someone said that was part of perimenopause. I said, I think it is. And I went and looked it up, and it was like, why?
It's estrogen.
Like, your ears start itching because you don't have enough estrogen. That to me is like insane.
Estrogen is a hormone that, it's every receptor in your body relies upon estrogen.
I was listening to, I think, the Huberman podcast probably, and he had somebody on there talking about, just like even estrogen to the point like in your joints, like it's responsible for like the myeliniation or whatever it is, the sheathing over certain things. And it's like, and just to not even have that, like how much pain people start to get into all of a sudden. And they're like, well, yeah, it's because you're losing estrogen.
That's exactly what it is. And being able to replenish that, again, this is where it gets kind of crazy, right? Being able to replenish it. And you have to think about this. As a woman, this is called your reproductive life cycle. So another stat for you, about 95% of women will go through menopause by the age of 55. So if you're 55 and over and you're still having your periods, as big of a pain in the butt as it probably is, it's actually a really good thing.
You're really special.
You're really special. And you're special because you're getting what's called endogenous estrogen protection. So your reproductive life cycle, date of first period to date of last period, that's your reproductive life cycle. During that time, your ovaries are producing estrogen and progesterone. So every month, your brain releases a hormone called FSH that stimulates the ovaries to ovulate. Day 14, on a normal 28-day cycle, you ovulate. Estrogen goes down. The brain now releases what's called luteinizing hormone. That stimulates for progesterone. At the end of that, you're basically the week before you have your period. Normally, everything crashes. That's what causes all the symptoms. So every single month, your body's producing estrogen and progesterone. About 100 nanograms per deciliter is what your body makes for estrogen. When a woman gets pregnant, put this in perspective, when a woman gets pregnant, your estrogen level goes to almost 3,000.
Which makes sense, because I'm just thinking about how I felt when I was pregnant. I felt great. I could lift more. I felt like, I was also eating everything in sight, which probably wasn't the best thing, but I felt great.
And I bet I can predict how you felt once you gave birth.
Oh, yeah. Terrible.
So think about that. Every single month during your reproductive life cycle, you're getting about 100 nanograms per deciliter, right? Then all of a sudden, what ends up happening is you spike up to 3,000 and then you go to
crash.
zero.
Yeah.
Like what do you think? And actually said nanograms, I'm sorry, it's actually picograms per milliliter we measure estrogen in. So this is another thing now that I'm getting into is postpartum. I just, again, it's huge. And these women, it's like, they all, what do you think is going to happen? Your body spikes in estrogen, then it totally plummets. You're trying to feed this newborn baby. You don't know if they're eating enough. They're up all night long. You're stressing out. Everything's wild. So the reason I bring all this up is because that reproductive life cycle, the longer that is, the more endogenous estrogen you get, the more protection you get for your heart. We talked briefly about hysterectomies, and this is a really important topic for women to understand. There's different types of hysterectomies. So there's one where you just remove uterus, you keep both your ovaries. That is really the best of them because you still have the hormone production. Then there's one where you have the ovaries and the uterus removed. This is called a bilateral oophorectomy. So both ovaries are removed. Overnight, instantaneous menopause. The danger is when you have young women. So let's say 40 years old, you now have this bilateral oophorectomy, you lose hormone production. You've essentially lost on average about 11 years of endogenous estrogen.
Oh, wow. That
can wreak havoc on the heart. So for women who had hysterectomies, critically important they fully educate themselves on HRT.
And do you see, I just wonder, like, have we seen a link between like a hysterectomy and earlier, like rates of earlier death due to cardiovascular issues?
100%. If any woman who has a shortened reproductive life cycle, either due to early menopause, premature ovarian insufficiency, or hysterectomy with bilateral oophorectomy. So any woman who's had a shortened span of estrogen protection absolutely increases their risk, not just for heart disease, for bone disease, and also for brain disease.
Wow.
The less time a woman gets that estrogen, the more at risk they are for all these diseases.
Wow.
So again, you have something that creates these major problems, and you have the solution being HRT, which again, for most women, if you're healthy enough, if you talk with your provider, if you are healthy enough, HRT is magical for ladies, not just to help them live longer, but help them live better for longer.
Better quality.
100%.
So one of the things I've heard a lot, getting older, and of course, like all my social media feeds are sending me all these
You're in the
videos.
algorithms, girl.
Yeah, my algorithm is all up in the menopause. But I hear so much about one of the biggest things. I mean, there's all these things obviously going on, all the hot flashes, all the night sweats, all the things, is the lower libido and what an impact that has been having on their marriages, right? Like we're in this crazy hormonal storm of we don't know what the F is going on, and then add on to it the impact of having no libido and the impact that has on your marriage.
So I talk about this all the time, right? So divorce rates skyrocket for women over the age of 40. About 75% of divorces are initiated by women over the age of 40. And again, not saying that menopause is absolutely responsible. Correlation does not equal causation, obviously, but there's a fairly plausible explanation. I think you can look at that. I talk about this in the book, and I have these conversations all the time, and I joke, but I'm being serious when I say this. Ladies will come in, and normally by the time they get to me, they're in pretty bad shape.
Yeah.
I mean, they're falling apart. It's
for
me, it gives me chills when I say it, because and this sounds bad when I say, I don't mean it the way I say it. I love menopause, first off, right? But when these women come in and they're sitting down in front of me and like, Eric, I have nowhere else to go.
Yeah, you feel kind of broken.
My doctor said nothing's wrong. My husband's driving me nuts. He thinks I'm cheating on him because I do not want to have sex. I have no drive, number one. Number two, physically hurts. I'm putting on extra weight. I'm going to the gym. I'm getting no benefits. I'm struggling at work. I can't sleep. I can't eat. My kids are driving me nuts. Nobody's giving me any answers. This is my last ditch effort. So when women sit down like that, every piece is falling apart. So for the guys, I'll tell the women, whatever blood draw is done, they'll meet with the provider. I'll say, look, Amanda, have TJ give me a call if he wants to talk. I'll walk him through and help him to understand some of this stuff.
Right.
And I have the same conversation every time. It's so funny because TJ will call and I'll be like, all right, dude, what's going on? He's like, man, I'm going crazy. Man, it's driving me nuts. Everything's falling apart. And, she's running around on me. I know she is, blah, blah. I have this conversation. I'll let him go. It's always the same thing. I'll be like, all right, real quick, dude, scale 1 to 10. 1 is you're not frustrated at all. 10 is you're ready to like gouge your eyeballs out. How frustrated are you as her husband? This goes the same way every time.
11.
Normally it's a 10 because we don't have enough brain capacity to think we could go above a 10, right? So I'm at a 10. I'll be like, okay, that's cool. So scale 1 to 10, you're on a 10. That's cool. So I've been talking with Amanda for a while now. Her level of frustration, about 119 on that same scale. So do me a favor. Everyone has led her to believe that she's crazy. Everyone has led her to believe there's nothing that can be done. The one person that she really needs right now in this moment is you. I'm not saying you have to fully understand why this is happening. I'm not saying, just do me a favor, hang in there, 45, 60, 90 days, maybe. Let's let this go. Let's see what happens. And I can't tell you how many times I have that same woman or the husband comes back into, knocking on the door. Can I talk to you, Eric? Close the door, bawling her eyes out. Thank you. Save my marriage. It is belligerent for women to not understand that you don't have to suffer through. And this is what women do too. You just push through. You don't complain. Women hunker through. Guys, we complain about everything. I don't feel good. Oh, I got none time to give me some crackers and ginger ale. Women are like, no big deal. I'm going to go do laundry. I'm going to run around. I'm going to help out at PTA. I'm going to volunteer at school. You need something, neighbors? I got you. I got 103 temperature. No big deal. Haven't eaten in 3 days. Haven't slept in a week. No problem. That's what women do. You push through it. And you're totally deprived of quality of life. And it's absolutely unacceptable. Right. And that's another important component to point out. When you think about all these things, when you're weighing your options, when you're looking at these risks and benefits, 100% one of the benefits that should be on that list is quality of life.
Right.
That is something that you should factor in, that you do deserve. This is not a time where you have to suffer through. Right. This is a time where you should be thriving. This is called crystallized intelligence. That's a whole other topic. So the point here with all this stuff is it can be very catastrophic to relationships, to marriages, and at work as well. There's all these issues it creates that are pretty easy to fix.
And I think women are it's easier to talk about the physical symptoms. I can talk about that, I'm not sleeping well. I can talk about that I feel more anxious. I can talk about that I'm gaining weight. It's very uncomfortable to talk about lack of sexual desire. Mm-hmm. I specifically wanted to call that out on here because, we went to dinner with a friend the other day and we were talking about, because our husbands are very similar, fitness driven, on TRT. Her and I are in the same boat when it comes to where we are in perimenopause. And we're like, we are plummeting and you guys are skyrocketing with your TRT. And we're like, we got to figure out how to make this work and meet in the middle. But, I think, even her and I are very close, talk about whatever, but even she wasn't as comfortable talking about the lack of sexual desire at the dinner table. Obviously, it was more like a text afterwards, like, hey, just have a question for you. And I'm like, yes, we got to talk about it, make it more mainstream and normal so that we can say there's a way to fix it. And
this is what I love, Amanda. So when I do my presentations, I do lots of women's events. So for me, when I do them, what I ask whoever's hosting it and having me come speak, I ask them politely, I'm like, do me a favor. Don't have any guys in the room, right? Just do me keep them at home. You can go do something tonight, buddy, right? So it's hard enough for me to get on stage and start talking with these women. I get a lot of side eyes, obviously. I'm the only guy in the room. I'm not a medical person up there talking to them about all these hormone related issues. So I have to build that trust. But what I will say is what's so gratifying is when I'm on stage and 15 minutes in, I can look out in the crowd and I can see half the room crying. Yep. And then everybody starts to open it up. And what ends up happening is I think the important thing for women to understand, whatever it is that you're dealing with, symptom wise, emotion wise, relationship wise, there's a very, very high probability that there are lots of other people that are going through the same exact thing. Right. We just don't talk about it. And I would agree with you. It's extremely uncomfortable. The one thing we have going for us, I feel like with me, I'm the Beastie Boys generation. I guess it was a Gen X. I don't know what it is. You got to fight for your right to party, right? Our generation, the women I work with, in the early 50s, whatever, it's I'm not taking no for an answer. How about that? I'm not going to take no for an answer. But the conversations are not being had at home. Mm-hmm. And you think about prior generations, my parents, my grandparents. If my grandparents came out of the grave and could hear the stuff that we talk about on social media.
My grandmother would cry.
You're talking about what? You're talking about sex on social media? That is not something that happened ever. You kept everything within your house. And as it relates to these health issues, the vast majority of women are like, Eric, never had a conversation with my mom. All I knew about menopause was she told me, number one, it sucked. Yeah. And number two, good luck.
Yeah.
It's go out and have fun with it.
Hot flash is the only thing I ever knew about menopause.
That's exactly right.
The only thing I ever knew was a symptom of menopause.
That's exactly. And for most women, they attribute menopause to all the symptoms. And I meet so many women. This is another danger zone as well. So many women who, Eric, thank you for writing the book. I don't need you. I'm through all that stuff. And that's a dangerous statement. Here's why. Most women think about symptoms, right? They're struggling with all the hot flashes, night sweats. And they're like, I need help with this. Please help me. Once they push through it, which most women do, once they push through it, it's I don't need you anymore. Well, that's where the true danger kicks in. So if you really wanted to look at it, technically pushing through all the symptom stuff, but then now you're postmenopausal, that's where the danger kicks in because that loss of estrogen just significantly elevated your risk of cardiovascular disease. So for women who have gone through it, who pushed through it, who have suffered through it, educating themselves on it, especially the sooner after they've gone through menopause, the better. Again, due to 60 years old or younger, less than 10 years postmenopausal, it's so important for women to understand menopause is not just symptoms. Menopause is long-term adverse health impacts as well. You have to be very cognizant of all the potential negatives of loss of estrogen.
Right. And so what is HRT?
Hormone replacement therapies. You hear of it as estrogen replacement therapies. It's basically where we replenish your hormones. So like the scenario I used earlier, hormones were here, now they're here, we replenish them. We're giving your body back what is now deficient. There's no way to restore your hormone levels to where they were, right? There's no supplements, there's none of this stuff. There's things you can help. There's things you can do to help, obviously. Lower your BMI, exercise, don't smoke, diet, all these things most certainly do help. Once your ovaries stop producing these hormones, you lose the very vast majority of all these hormones. So HRT is just replenishing them, giving you back what is now deficient. Again, not just to help mitigate symptoms, but to provide that long-term health. Again, mainly to the heart being the number one leading cause of death.
Yeah. And so what are some names people might hear if they're pursuing it?
Hormone replacement therapies, estrogen replacement therapies, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. If they're looking at synthetic forms, again, it could be Premarin. There's all these, they're calling it menopausal hormone therapy now instead of hormone replacement therapy. And I think it's kind of like
rebranding.
It's a rebranding, right? Because, I'm a little bit torn between, what I don't think we should be doing is misleading women. I think we should be doing is saying, hey, this is the new age of hormone replacement therapies. Let me explain to you what no one else has explained to you. Let's go back into this study. And it's crazy for me now because I talk to so many people who are like, Eric, I didn't want to do HRT before, but now that all these new studies are out, it's safer, I'm going to do it. And it's like, well, there's really not a whole bunch of new studies. There are, but what we're doing now is we're just viewing that one study and
going back and digging in. Yeah.
That's exactly right. So, that whole study, it was just a total misrepresentation of the data. They just took this information, they pulled it out very selectively. And there's lots of data in that study. Again, my 3 years in research for this book, I had to be very objective, right? When I got into this book, I owed it to every person who read this book. I'm like, I hated the Women's Health Initiative because all the research I'd done prior to writing the book, I hated it. Everything I saw, everything I heard was Women's Health Initiative is bad. They put bad information out there. So when I really started to dig deep into it, I had to be very aware of the fact. I had to separate that emotion.
Right.
I had to turn that off. Be like, you know what? I'm going to view this. And I would agree that there was information that was incorrectly extrapolated from that study, but there also was a lot of positive things that came from that study. So now the big thing is, there's these new studies out saying it's safer. It's really not. It's that people are going back into it and saying, wait a second, let's take a look at this data. Exactly right. And that's what we should be doing. And there should be more studies. Yeah. And the FDA actually did announce some money that will be designated specifically for women's health, hopefully to conduct some more large randomized controlled trials. That's what we really need.
I really hope so. Because I think we need, especially if there's such an impact on like your cardiovascular health, your brain health, all of these things. And if we're talking about also in a time of age where we're trying to cut Medicare costs, and a lot of that has to do with preventative health, right? Not to get to the point where you require those extreme medical interventions. So
we prevent so we don't treat.
Yeah.
And another very big part of this as well is genetic testing, which is another thing we do at LifeMed.
It's on my list.
It's on your list also?
Yep.
See, I read your list. You didn't know I read your list. Genetic testing is another thing that we do. It's called nutrigenomics. So this is a cheek swab that we do. We check about 100 different protein coding genes. So as humans, we have about 20,000 protein coding genes. They're responsible for doing different things. In total, 70 to 80,000, but 20,000 of them actually are coded to do something. As humans, we share about 99.5% of our DNA with every living human.
Oh, wow.
So the only thing that separates us is 0.5% of our genome. Believe it or not, we share 98.5% of our genome with chimpanzees.
Oh, wow.
So we check about 100 different protein coding genes. A lot of people have heard of what's called MTHFR. Does not stand for the words you think it stands for. We can't say those things on here, man. A teacher gave me very strict orders. She's like, no bad words. It actually stands for methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. So there's about 12-ish different genes that are responsible for what's called methylation. So when we take food in, our body has to convert those nutrients into a usable form. If we have these variants, they're called SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms. If we have these variants that we get from our parents, we're born with them. We can't change them. If we have these variants, the gene, whatever that gene is, might not be working correctly.
Right.
And as it relates to methylation, if you have variants in there, which about 40 to 50% of people do have that variant for methylation, energy production, brain function, neurologic and mood, immune system response, detoxification, age and longevity. All these things we attribute to getting older could be a simple variant in a gene that could be corrected with vitamin supplementation.
Would you have to use like the methylene type vitamins, like the B12s and like the blues and like that kind of stuff?
Normally you have to use methylene. Depends on what it is. You also have what's called a COMT gene, catechol-O-methyltransferase. You can have a fast or slow COMT gene. So just having a variant in that MTHFR gene does not mean you want to flood your body with methylated B vitamins, because if you have a slow COMT gene, that could create some issues. But normally it's going to be methylated vitamins. We also check some estrogen elimination pathways, which is really important for women and for men too. But for women, even women who are on HRT. So when your body produces estrogen via the ovaries, or if you're getting it with hormone replacement therapies, your body has to eliminate those estrogens.
Right.
So once it's done with it,
Yeah.
it has to get rid of it. It has to be done with it. So there's a process that's involved. It starts with what's called hydroxylation. So it takes these used estrogens, it hydroxylates it, then it methylates it, then it eliminates it. If you have genes in those variants, if you have variants in those genes, your body might not be properly eliminating the estrogens.
Okay.
So you have these estrogens that go down this bad pathway called 4-hydroxyestrone. You have this variant, your body's done with estrogen, it goes down the bad pathways, it's slow to be eliminated, it backlogs, recirculates in your blood, can exacerbate all your hormone symptoms, and actually lead to some long-term not good stuff.
Oh, gosh.
Our genetic report checks that. Another one it checks is what's called an ApoE gene, which is a neurodegenerative risk gene. If you get a copy of an E4, you either get a 2, a 3, or a 4 from each parent. If you get an E4, your risk of neurodegenerative disease is about 60 to 70%.
Oh, wow. And so you can have testing that
Yes.
can show if you have that.
If you have that gene variant. Now, important to point out, just because you have that high risk gene, which is very uncommon, less than 5% of the population carry it. If you have that gene does not mean you're automatically just going to get it. It means you have a very high predisposition. If you have it, we got to be cautious. General rule of thumb, what's healthy for the heart's healthy for the brain.
Right.
So if you have that gene variant, that's not good. If you're a woman, 2/3 of Alzheimer's patients are women, double whammy. So if you have that gene variant and you're a woman, we have to be extra sensitive to glucose, blood sugar. We do not want A1C to go up. Diabetes is really, really big thing. Very deadly disease. Again, not smoking, not drinking, monitoring blood pressure, managing your lipids. Cholesterol is a whole other topic. There's no such thing as good and bad cholesterol. There's so much misinformation.
That's a big, I feel like I've seen a lot of mixed information on cholesterol, especially with women as we get older. You know, there's just a lot of like some things are like heart healthy, lower all your cholesterol, but then there's a certain amount of cholesterol that you need to be protective. And so it's like, I've seen so much mixed information.
We have to have cholesterol. No cholesterol, no life.
Right.
The issue is with cholesterol to go to where it needs to go. It's not like blood glucose, right? Sugar can go where it's water soluble. So sugar goes throughout your body, goes wherever it has to go to. Cholesterol is not water soluble. So it requires what's called lipoproteins. You have LDLs, low density lipoproteins. They call that bad cholesterol, and high density lipoproteins, HDLs. That's good cholesterol. That's really not an accurate statement, because if you look at the molecule of cholesterol inside of both of those lipoproteins, it's the same exact cholesterol. It's just a carrier mechanism that does good and bad things.
Okay.
2 markers without geeking out, because I know we only have like 4 hours to do this. 2 markers I would very, very strongly encourage every person listening to this to check. Number 1 is called ApoB. It's apolipoprotein B. Number 2 is called LPA. In medical world, it's known as LP little a. LP little a is a genetic marker. Technically, you check it one time. You don't have to. Again, it's a blood test. ApoB, apolipoprotein B, that's a risk factor for cardiovascular disease. It is causally linked. We have significant amounts of studies and literature that say that you have elevated ApoB that is causally linked to cardiovascular disease. Here's the problem with this. People have elevated ApoB. We know it's causally linked to cardiovascular disease. Unless your 10-year risk of cardiovascular disease is high, so I'm 52. If I go to a doctor's office, I pull ApoB, let's say it's 250, which is very, very high. They're going to treat me pretty aggressively because my 10-year risk of cardiovascular disease is high. If I have a 32-year-old guy come in, 20 years younger than me, same exact ApoB, diet and exercise, see you next year.
Right.
Diet and exercise, see you next year. 7, 10, 15 years later, they now have advanced cardiovascular disease because it wasn't treated early on. It's the same exact crazy backwards thought process. We know smoking cigarettes is causally linked to lung cancer.
Yeah.
It's the same thought process as saying, hey, keep smoking.
Yeah, keep
once
smoking
you get lung cancer,
you can stop.
That's exactly right. Then we'll address it. Like, how crazy is that?
Yeah.
So for women going through menopause, loss of estrogen increases those LDLs, which is bad, decreases HDLs, which is also bad. And those ApoB particles, you have to monitor this stuff, because when the estrogen goes away, all those risks, all those things that you might have never had a problem with before could be a significant issue. Cardiovascular disease, again, we can almost totally eradicate cardiovascular disease.
So like TJ and I would say on the much more healthier side of what we eat. My cholesterol levels the last time were high. And I was like, what the fuck?
Well, here's why. Because about 80% of your cholesterol is made in your liver. Only about 20% comes from food, and it's a form called esterified cholesterol. So the majority of cholesterol that you consume via your food goes in and poops back out. So even if you have the best diet ever, you could still have elevated cholesterols, again, because about 80% of it's made in the liver.
Yeah.
These are things that everybody has to understand, not just women. I mean, especially women need to, because you could have a woman who's never had any issues with this stuff at all.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden it's like, well, why is all this stuff creeping up?
Yeah, I never had an issue with it.
Never had problems with it. Insulin sensitivity is another one that we check. Insulin resistance. You want to be very insulin resistant.
Yeah.
So when you eat sugar, sugar goes throughout your body. Sugar goes in the muscle. So when you eat sugar, your pancreas releases insulin. You want to be very insulin sensitive, meaning you eat sugar's in the blood, the insulin, just a little bit, insulin goes out, finds the sugar, pushes it in the muscle. When you become insulin resistant, now you eat sugar circulating, the pancreas releases that insulin, but you become resistant. So now it's like more, give me more. Now, eventually your body's not able to push that sugar into muscle, and muscle, another benefit, largest repository for sugar is muscle. So more muscle means less sugar circulating. You become insulin resistant, your A1C goes up, you're above a 6.5.
Diabetic.
The average type 2 diabetic has a shortened lifespan of almost 6 years.
Yeah. And my mom, who's also has for most of her life been very fit, in her mid 60s was diabetic, became diabetic.
Very deadly disease. You do not want to play around with it. It's one of our body's most basic metabolic functions. If you're unable to remove sugar from blood, it is insanely deadly. Loss of estrogen leads to increases and all that. People don't want to take, all the medications. Metformin's a big one.
Yeah.
PCOS is another thing, polycystic ovarian syndrome. A lot of women suffer with that. You have to be very cautious about diabetes. All these things, again, it all goes back to starting with baseline education and starting with things I should be doing right now. So 10, 15, 20 years from now, I'm safe.
So women in their, let's say, mid to early 30s early to mid 30s should start really educating themselves on this, really looking at increasing muscle mass. And then, if they were interested in hormone replacement therapy, how would someone go about it? You
have to find someone who would be willing to even pull your hormones. Believe it or not, lots of doctors don't even pull hormones.
Yeah.
Find someone. Obviously, we specialize in this. There's other places out there as well, but you really want to have hormones pulled. And it's not just the hormones. You really want to get baselines. Again, optimally, a woman 30-ish, 35-ish, let's say, we get baselines for someone like her. So once she gets to the stage where she gets into perimenopause, we know what's happening. It's a hormone called FSH, follicle stimulating hormone. So for women who have had hysterectomies who don't have periods, there's no way for them to know when they're going into menopause. They don't have any periods anymore. Yeah. So we check a hormone called FSH, follicle stimulating hormone. That's the hormone I talked about earlier that stimulates the ovaries to produce estrogen. For a woman who does not have the periods anymore, we can look at FSH. When FSH goes up and estrogen starts to drop, that's how we know they're going into menopause. And that FSH stays elevated. The pituitary gland does not understand. All they know is keep sending messaging, and then the estrogen continues to drop. So the baselines would be extremely important for women to have. Okay. And then again, on that list would be that muscle mass, which is just so there's no way to overemphasize the long-term positive health effects of skeletal muscle mass. You just can't overstate them.
Right. I know I teach kickboxing, and I've been adding more weights and more jumping, and people are like, what are we doing? I'm like, we need to add weights and we need to add jumping. Like 100%. We need that. And they're like, oh, fine.
It's great for the bones.
I can always tell what week is my week to write programming.
It's important. And again, we talk about that loss of muscle. One of the first type of muscles we lose as sarcopenia kicks in. They're type 2 muscle fibers. So they're the fast twitch muscles. They're the first ones to go. This is where the danger comes for women over the age of 65. Right. So you walk off a curb, you step, your ankle twist. Those type 2 muscle fibers provide that explosive, you catch yourself, you bounce yourself. Yeah. Well, you're 65 and over, your type 2 muscle mass is decimated. You step off the curb, your ankle twists, you don't have the muscle, you fall over, you fracture that hip. It's not good news for all parties involved.
So hormone replacement therapy might include the estrogen, the progesterone, the testosterone, and then obviously the prescribing, necessarily prescribing, but encouraging the weightlifting, progressive overload, getting stronger. I think there's so much. I could literally talk about this forever. So,
well, and the vitamins, another important part of this as well.
Vitamins.
And I don't like to discourage. I think one of the big misconceptions for women is, not going to do HRT. I'm going to do everything I can naturally. Mm-hmm. And it's important to emphasize that there's no supplement that's going to replenish that loss of estrogen. Right. Now, again, I'm not discouraging supplementation. It's a very important thing. I do feel like a lot of people, not just women, men included, we over supplement and we don't fully understand why we're taking supplements. Sure. That's another big thing. You really want to make sure that you're supplementing for true deficiencies. And the only way you know that is to understand what your body is deficient in. That's where genetic testing comes in and blood panels come in. But, the thought of women just saying, hey, I'm done with this. I'm good with this. I don't want to touch hormones. There's all these other things they can do to help. But I don't want to sound negative when I say this. There's no diet. There is no exercise that is going to outrun hormones.
Right.
I can't tell you how many women come out. They're like, Eric, I'm exercising harder than I ever have. I'm dieting better than I ever have. Not only am I not seeing improvements to my body composition, I'm going backwards.
Yeah, I'm feeling worse because now I have no estrogen for recovery. So.
And I have no testosterone for muscle. And it's just, it's decimated. Weight redistribution in the men region, they get extremely frustrated, rightfully so. Mm-hmm. And what are they told to do? Get on the treadmill, get on the elliptical. They're not touching weights. We actually have a machine that I would welcome you to use, and anybody who is listening to this who would want to come in. It's called the InBody machine. It's a body composition machine. Mm-hmm. So it's referred to as bioelectrical impedance analysis. It checks your intracellular water weight, extracellular water weight, visceral adipose tissue, basal metabolic rate. It's an important machine so everyone can understand where's my body composition. GLPs, we didn't talk about them. Semaglutide, tirzepatide, Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, Zepbound. There's a new one right now called retatrutide. Not sure if you heard about that one. It's a triagonist, which is wild. Still in phase 3s. Another important thing for all the listeners, if you're taking peptides, or if you've heard about peptides, if you're purchasing them off the internet without a blood draw and without meeting with a provider, there's a very high probability you're taking what's called research peptides. And you can look at the labels on the peptides and they clearly say not for human consumption. Right? Yeah. It's wild to me.
And I'm like, sure, let's put that in.
Well, who wouldn't do that? I mean, some guy in his bathtub made this. What do you guys say? Something wrong with it? So peptides are really,
I feel like peptides are like a really big thing right now. Like is it BP?
BBC 157.
Yeah.
TB 500. It's called the Wolverine stack. It's an anti-inflammatory. You can actually take that directly in injuries. It is magical. We offer that at LifeMed. Awesome peptide. But if you look at like the GLPs, glucagon-like peptides, there's tons and tons. People who start on these medications have to understand if you do not establish exercise habits and dietary habits, you're going to lose muscle. And you mark my words on this. And all my TV shows, all my podcasts, everything I do, I say this, and I hope they hold on to that, to these interviews. Fast forward 7-10 years from now.
That's what I'm worried about is 10 years from now, all these women that have no muscle but are skinny.
You're spot on.
You're going to hurt yourself.
That will end up being the number one most adverse long-term health impact will be the loss of skeletal muscle mass and not understanding how important muscle is metabolically active. You have a lot of muscle, you're sitting here burning calories.
Right.
The issue is with most people, and nationwide, about 73% of GLP patients are women. So it's a lot more women than men that are taking them. The issue with them is if you're taking them and you're not exercising, by exercising, heavy weights, and protein intake, you have to be taking in about 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Right. If you're not doing those things, you will lose muscle. You will lose weight. It's going to come in the form of muscle, and there's no emphasis being placed on that whatsoever.
No, and I have very mixed opinions on GLP-1s. I think they're very helpful for those that need it. Mm-hmm. I'm very concerned about the long-term impacts, even if you're like microdosing, because if you're not exercising and you're not doing those things, you're still losing muscle. And I think the one thing that we've learned over time recently is how important muscle is to women, especially, that resistance training, the osteoporosis and the bone strength that also comes with weight training. I'm very concerned about that long-term
Totally
impact.
agree with you. And I will say this too, Amanda, there's actually some pretty significant additional benefits, like ancillary benefits that people are not thinking about, mainly like full body inflammation. I can't tell you how many patients I talk with, they're like, Eric, for the first time in my life, I am without pain in my joints. It's an anti-inflammatory. It's amazing. Addiction is another one. They're actually doing some studies on right now because of the way it works.
Using GLP-1s for addiction or just peptides?
Using the GLPs, and not that they're using them for addiction, but as an additional benefit. Because remember, the way these medications work is they suppress appetite. They slow down digestive process. So there's parts of your brain that actually they can work on to kind of sound out all those loud noises, like mainly for food.
Yeah, like if they're talking about food noise, would that also be like cravings of other things like alcohol, drugs?
100% yes. So there's actually studies now they're showing. Now again, it's not going to be like an indication. They're not going to say approved for
Off
this,
label,
let's say. But this is something they're most certainly talking about. Obstructive sleep apnea, obesity-induced obstructive sleep apnea. I guess it was a little over a year ago now, the FDA approved Zepbound, the active ingredients tirzepatide, to help with obesity-induced obstructive sleep apnea. So these GLPs have lots of ancillary benefits.
They have a lot of great benefits because, I think anybody that works in healthcare knows all the different comorbidities with being overweight, all the different, things that come along with that, diabetes, heart disease, COPD, all the things, hypertension, like how destructive those diseases are. And a lot of it is because of being obese. And if you can take those medications to reduce your body mass and to get healthier, and some of those diseases will go away and you have a much better quality of life. But again, we have to really push that.
Well, the other thing I'd be cautious of too, and I read some of these studies and they talk about GLPs reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease. And it's like, well, wait a second here. Are the GLPs reducing the cardiovascular disease? Or are the GLPs leading to weight loss that's leading to the reduction in cardiovascular disease? Because you have to be sensitive to that, because if the GLPs are responsible for the reduction in cardiovascular disease, which I have been reading some very preliminary studies that are showing there can be some links there with it, but nothing that's been randomized yet, nothing that we have any substantial data on. But if you hear that and you think, okay, I'm not overweight, I'm actually very much in shape, but I do have cardiovascular disease, so let's take these GLPs. That's where it gets dangerous. That's another thing. And you talk about studies, right? So you look at observational studies and randomized controlled trials. Again, another important thing I point out to everybody, if you read a headline that says study finds ABC, whatever it is, whenever you see those headlines, make sure you do a little bit more research to figure out what type of study it is.
Right.
If it's an observational study, almost throw it out, right? Observational studies really serve one purpose. They help you develop a hypothesis.
Right.
So observationally, I look at all this data and I say, you know what? Wearing flip-flops causes blisters. That is my hypothesis. Now you take that hypothesis and you test it in a double-blind placebo, randomized controlled trial. So often people see study finds and they don't even look far enough to say, well, it's an observational study. There's so much room for bias. It's data you're collecting. It's already there. You're just analyzing the data.
Yeah.
You can find anything you want to find in this. So very important for us to understand when you see any headline, study finds, always research to see what type of study. If it's observational, be cautious. Not saying it's inaccurate information. Who funded the study, right? You see this all the time. Drug companies fund the studies. And I'm not automatically going to say they're doing bad stuff or whatever, but
they have skin in the game.
There's interest there. You have to be very cognizant of that. That's all. Just be careful where you see the studies.
Right. Where would be a good place for people to find some non-biased research?
PubMed, NIH's website. That would be probably one of the best places. I would you have to be careful because there's a lot of big words on that website. So I try to read them. I got
Googling every other word.
I got every seventh word. But the other thing too, this is called meta-analysis, right? So you take lots of randomized controlled trials and you review all of them. It's called a meta-analysis. So I feel like kind of with me writing this book, it was my own little microcosm of a meta-analysis. I went out to all these different places. I researched all these different studies, all these different people, whatever. Then collectively, I came up with all this information. So I think what's important for people when they go to educate themselves, don't go to any one source. Right? Go to multiple sources, people that you trust. One person I'd very strongly encourage everyone to follow is Dr. Peter Attia. We haven't talked about him, I don't think. There's no way everybody should be following Peter Attia. He is the medical mind of our generation. He wrote a book called Outlive. He has a podcast called The Drive.
I've heard about his podcast.
It's amazing. I will say this, my book probably somewhere between, 40 to 50% of what I've written about in my book in one way or another originating from something to deal with Peter Attia.
Okay.
A guest on a show, a study he referred to, whatever it is. He's a medical mind. So take people like him, like you mentioned, Huberman, You have all these different places. So when you learn this, when you research this, find it multiple places, make sure you're comfortable with it. I would never recommend one resource, especially not ChatGPT. Again, it's great for preliminary research, but you gotta be very cautious of where you get that from. But you educate yourself in all these different places. You come up with, inch deep, mile wide, I call it, right? Just go inch deep on every topic, mile wide on lots of different things. When you do that, you'll find that, we're in the information age. We can learn anything about anything.
Right.
It's right at our fingertips.
Very accessible. So obviously, I mean, we're very involved with LifeMed in our family in multiple ways.
Thank you for that.
When LifeMed first opened here in Rehoboth, we were doing a fundraiser for a fallen officer, a law enforcement officer. And I called, I was like, I just want a basket. And I think it was Vinny that I talked to, and he was like, well, tell me about it. And I was like, well, it's for law enforcement. I said, I think half of the law enforcement community probably goes to LifeMed in one shape or another. And he, I think, gave me a whole education session on why TRT is so important, especially for folks that are like military, first responders that have that shift work that are, all the things. And then I told him about TJ and about the TJ's incident. And he was like, have him come in. And we've been part of LifeMed ever since, and they've been so kind and generous to us and do so many great things for our community. And I think half of Rehoboth, if not 2/3 of Rehoboth, has a LifeMed t-shirt somewhere.
I love that. That's music to my ears. It's what I do. I'm about an event a day, so I did about 355 events, I think, last year. So
I believe it. You guys are everywhere.
We just run, and that's the important thing. I would say with like law enforcement, especially, we are I don't know if there's any way to be any more pro first responder than we are.
I'm so thankful for that.
Oh my goodness, we love anyone who wears uniform. I was in the Marine Corps, like I told you, so we're huge on that. It's anyone who was served. We love that, and it's so important. We talk so much about women's health here, and a whole other podcast could be about for the guys for testosterone. It's a totally different messaging mechanism for men, because as guys we're just like, we're just like, I feel okay, whatever. It's like, it's so wild, because obviously with women, normally all this is initiated by some disruption, the quality of life, and you're like, I can't function anymore. For men, it's extremely gradual, to the point where a lot of times by the time a guy finds out something is wrong, it's too late. I'm going to give you an example of this. Trick question. Okay, so remember, don't put too much thought process into it, because you're smart, and smart people always put a lot of process thought. I'm like, it's a trick question.
Think too much.
Trick question. Patient presents with their first major cardiac event. So in the world of medicine, it's called MACE, major adverse cardiac event. Man, woman, does not matter. They're having their first major cardiac event. What is the number one symptom they present with? Remember, trick question.
Anxiety or chest pain. First thing that comes to my mind.
Sudden death. Almost 50% of people who suffer their first major cardiac event do not live. Here's the crazy part. About 90% of cardiovascular disease is due to modifiable, preventable lifestyle issues. Number 1, don't smoke. Number 2, manage your blood pressure. Number 3, manage your lipids. You do those 3 things, you can almost decrease your risk of dying by cardiovascular disease by about 90%. For guys, a lot of times, we just truck along, we do our thing. It is so crazy important for men to understand that whatever it is that's causing these issues, whatever it is happening internally, when someone drops dead suddenly, what caused that sudden death almost every single time had been progressing for decades.
I would say it didn't happen just that day. It was the gradual over time.
What I tell everyone, men and women, but mainly for men, when I tell them, I use the analogy like the Marine Corps. We didn't have GPS in the Marine Corps. When I was in the Marine Corps, we had a compass and we'd shoot what's called an azimuth. I'm an old head. I told you this. She's laughing my age.
I remember printing out directions from MapQuest and.
Oh, girl, you're advanced. We used to have the ADC books. You had to make a copy of it and go to the back and be like E4. We had to put a highlighter going all over to where I was going to. Goodness, it was driving me nuts. I forgot what I was just talking about. Oh, for guys. So this is, I use the compass, right? So I talk about being downrange. You shoot what's called an azimuth. So I shoot my azimuth downrange. If my azimuth is off by this much, by the time I get to my target, I'm off by a mile. Health is the same exact way, especially with men. We pull blood. We find an issue that's this big of a deal right now. We squash it. This much of an issue left unattended to because we're hard-headed and don't want to know, we don't care, turns into something huge that would almost be totally preventable.
And like my plug for LifeMed, even if you don't like follow through with all the other things, like my plug for the blood work is so, like, I've heard so many stories. Like, one of our good friends, there's cardiac issues in her family, but she is, my age, probably healthier than I am, like super fit, manages her diet, has a stressful job, but is managing, right?
Mm-hmm.
They did all of the panels and determined that she had some very specific genetic heart condition that she had no idea about until she did that panel. And now every 6 months, I think she has to go to Jefferson and get checked out. She never would have known that had she not gone to LifeMed and got her blood tested.
We have one of our patients in for HIPAA purposes. We can't talk about people, but for this gentleman, he runs around, talks about, his name's Chad Jones. He was one of our patients who came out very, very similar to that. Came out, had a blood panel done. We detected something, sent him back to a cardiologist, which our medical director is a cardiologist, by the way. Okay. But so we detected this, sent him out to his cardiologist. He was in for open heart surgery within like a couple weeks after this. They said he had about a year left to live had he not detected that. Yeah. So it's these things, again, with men that it's like, okay, we can do these things preventatively, that we can find these things. And again, the messaging for women's pretty easy because you have these things happening that are just making it next to impossible to function daily. Right. For men, it's extremely gradual. That loss of testosterone is very gradual. And then
another guy lives up the road. He ended up going in for, he was like a really jacked, ripped guy, but he was, I think, saying that it was like he was tired more, like harder to keep on his muscle, working harder, not seeing all the results. He went in for his panel to get started on TRT, and they ended up catching a very early stage of prostate issues. And I'm like, there's just so much that can be like, just regular medical professionals don't go into such detail that, again, you can catch something so small so early to have such a huge impact. So,
and what you're referring to is PSA, prostate specific antigen. I mean, in the year 2026, there is no reason for any man to ever die of prostate cancer with the testing we have available. It's a simple blood test. Any man over 40, we check this. And it's those exact panels that's checking those things. And, with TRT especially, again, whole other topic, but that gets so mismarketed to men. If you're tired, you need TRT, right? That's what you hear. The downside, men don't understand. You have to understand and research this stuff. There's a time when it's most likely going to be beneficial for a guy to start it. For someone in their 20s, early 30s, they haven't had kids yet, that's not the time.
Right. No.
Now, there are other medications in lieu of testosterone. There's enclomiphene, there's HCG, there's other medications that can accomplish the same mission.
Would peptides also be?
Peptides are going to have a minimal increase. So basically with peptides too, we tell a lot of, especially, when people come out and they're curious about not like the BPC, which is for injury, but like IGF-1, CJC, ipamorelin, tesamorelin, sermorelin, all these different peptides. To make a generalized statement, especially for guys, because normally they're the ones who want to put on all the muscle. To make a generalized statement, if your hormones aren't optimized, if your testosterone's not optimized, peptides are pretty much a waste. Okay. These are branched chain amino acids. The way I explain it is, view testosterone like gasoline and peptides are like nitric oxide. Okay. That's kind of the best way to explain it. But peptides are you have to make sure if your hormones aren't optimized, if your testosterone's not optimized, peptides are probably a waste. But for a lot of guys, they're told, hey, you're lacking energy, libido is a little jacked up maybe, you should start testosterone. And when a guy starts on it, normally it's going to be a lifelong thing. And after taking it for X amount of years, your body's natural production can lay suppressed. So it's very important for men to recognize that once you start this, normally going to be long-term.
It's not a short-term thing that we're doing just to fix a small problem. This is a path you're going to go on.
This is a long-term path. Now, again, there are significant long-term positives. Prime example of this, the FDA put a black box warning. This is a label that goes on any medication. You're familiar with this. FDA approves the medication. They determine a year, 2 years, 5 years later, hey, the study was done. We think there's some contraindications here. There's some health risks. They put these black box warnings on medications. Testosterone had a black box warning on there, said may increase your risk of major cardiac events. Was placed on testosterone back in 2013, 14, I think it was. Just this past year,
they removed it.
There was a study called Traverse, and they were like, you know what? We're going to remove that. We're going to remove that warning label, which the FDA very rarely does. Once warning labels go on, they don't come off. That was for testosterone. Now we talked about the head of the FDA, Dr. McCary. They're in the process right now of removing warning labels from estrogen. Vaginal estrogen, localized estrogen is another dangerous thing. UTIs, urinary tract infections, are crazy deadly for women.
Especially as you get older.
Especially as you get older. The problem is you get misdiagnosed. The insurance industry spends billions of dollars a year on hospital stays for UTIs.
That's one of our highest reoccurrences.
That's exactly right. And extremely deadly too, right? Sepsis. So for your women who suffer with these with urinary tract infections, vaginal estrogen is magical to help with that. It's localized. It provides benefits, but there's nothing systemic from it. So if you look at a warning label on estrogen, it says, if you've had blood clots, DVTs, pulmonary embolisms, you're not a candidate for this. None of that applies to localized estrogen, but there was still a warning label on it. So they're just now removing the warning label. Women are going to the hospitals with these UTIs, spending time in the hospital they shouldn't be spending, or worst case, dying from it. Meanwhile, we have estrogen inserts that could totally eliminate it, but doctors don't want to prescribe it because they think that it increases risk of all these other things. That's not accurate. These are all things that just misinformation, which fortunately now we do have a director of the FDA who's making these big changes, because women should have access to those things, especially if it means them not having to sit in the hospital for a week unnecessarily.
Right. And then, all the things that come with long hospital stays.
Yes.
Increased infections, I won't get on that. I won't get on that soapbox. So like with men, TRT is a lifelong thing. For women, is HRT a lifetime thing once you start?
It should be. And again, you have to monitor
that
blood.
Woman was 91, still taking
That's
it.
exactly right. So the studies, again, remember, like I said earlier, estrogen's good at preventing, not good at treating. It's all about timing of initiation. If the estrogen is initiated at a time where you're healthy enough to start, no study shows that you should stop. Now, again, very important to note, you have to continue to monitor blood. You have to see if anything changes. But when you're looking at the protection it provides, the cardiovascular disease to osteoporosis and to neurodegenerative disease, all the studies point to replenishing that estrogen back to physiologic levels provides these long-term benefits that, again, there's no reason to stop. Another dangerous thing I hear all the time, a lot of people in the medical community mix up this whole 10-year postmenopausal thing. So I can't tell you how many women I've talked to who are like, Eric, I was on HRT. I went through menopause, started on HRT. It was absolutely magical. Had to stop, unfortunately. And I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. Like, did you have like a major event, like breast cancer?
Yeah.
Like, what happened? They're like, no, the doctor said I hit my max. Like, I had to hit my 10-year max. I'm like, what 10-year max? So this gets totally mixed up. It's not that after you've been on it for 10 years, you have to stop. It's if you are more than 10 years postmenopausal, you shouldn't start. And when I say you shouldn't start, it's not, you have to be cautious if you do decide to start.
Right, 'cause that 1 year. So
it's all these dangerous things. You have these women who, and if you talk to any woman who's on HRT, almost every single one will most likely tell you it is the best thing they've ever done in their whole life. Right. Progesterone, especially at nighttime, right before bed, it's a capsule for sleep.
Let me tell you,
done.
I started taking that. I'm out.
Yeah, right.
I am out. And I'm like, at 4:30 when my alarm goes off, I'm like, whew, all right.
That's the way it's supposed to be.
Honestly, has been a game changer for me. Just that alone for sleep has been a game changer for me.
So you have these women who start on HRT who get significant benefits from it. Again, not that just at the symptom mitigation, but the things they can't see. And then for whatever reason, they're told they have to stop. So it's different with women because once you lose ovarian function, your ovaries stop producing the hormones. With men, it's the pituitary gland that's stimulating the testes to produce testosterone. Once we get that exogenous testosterone from the outside, the messaging goes back to the brain that we have enough testosterone.
And we don't have to keep making it.
So then it basically shuts down. LH and FSH, the pituitary gland shuts that down. We're getting it exogenously. If a guy comes off of that testosterone, the body has to kick back in. So normally it's not like with women where you lose ovarian function, it's done, it's over 12 consecutive months. With men, as we get older, we lose the testosterone. We replenish it with exogenous. It goes back up. If we come off of it, the hopes are that it's going to kick back in again. So it's not like menopause where you lose total function. But for men at some age, our ability to make it on our own. But when you look at the long-term benefits, mainly for cardiovascular health for men, everything points to, again, physiologic levels, replenishing the testosterone. The vast majority of guys who are on testosterone, you would never know. Yeah. That's not a big misconception. Like, oh, these guys are all jacked up.
And like raging somewhere.
Exactly right. Like punching walls. Like that's a total misconception, right? No. Total misconception about testosterone, which is wild. But the vast majority of guys who even come into LifeMed, you would never know they're on testosterone.
Oh no, and it's an entire, it's such a diverse group. Like if you're just sitting there, you'll see like, every age and every walk of life coming in there, which I appreciate.
That's important. So. And when you have, like you talked about, one person starting and the other person, like we so often have the wife who starts and the husband's trying to keep up, or the husband starts, the wife's trying to keep up.
Yeah.
So much of that.
TJ is like, yep.
It happens all the time, which is great. And we should all be able to enjoy quality of life, right? And again, especially going back for women where a 30-year life is spent in these postmenopausal years, it's you're owed that, right? That is a time, again, where you should be thriving emotionally. Right. Why would you not at least consider it? Why would you at least educate yourself on it to understand the risk and benefits? And there are significant benefits to it. And again, what's important to note, one of the very top benefits on that list should be quality of life, which women are owed. And so often they don't think that they're owed that quality of life. Right. And that absolutely is something that should put in that equation. You give birth, you raise kids, you take care of all this stuff. Now you get to a point in your life where you should be thriving, not just surviving. Yeah. Why not accentuate that? Why not get back to a point where you're actually able to enjoy and to strengthen relationships and to do all these things?
Definitely. So one thing like TJ and I were wondering is, because, obviously, I mean, we're very pro LifeMed, but you're in Rehoboth, Timonium, Bel Air, and Westchester, Pennsylvania. So for folks that maybe aren't in that area, is there a way for them to, let's say, like get lab work close to where they live, send it in, and then have like a virtual?
There is. So, and one location also is Columbia. We have one in Columbia and Howard County. Yep. So we have 5 total. We do require we have to establish what's called a patient-provider relationship. So for our patients who are out of state, let's say, and wherever they are, Florida, they can do what's called an initial consult. That's the first step in the process. 30-minute conversation with one of our providers or one of our nursing staff. Basic medical information, any kind of diseases or anything else going on. 30 minutes. That can be done over the phone. The blood work's done next. If they're in-house, if they're local, they come in-house. We do Quest. Right. We have Quest in-house at all of our locations. If they're off-site in another state, let's say, we can upload those forms into Quest. They can go to their local Quest drawing place, have the blood draw done. 2 weeks later, when the results come back, is when they would have to come in person. Okay. So we have to have one in-person meeting.
One in person.
In theory, we have lots of patients who could fly in from Florida, let's say. They have their 1 hour meeting with the provider. At the conclusion of that, they make a recommendation for testosterone, weekly injections, 0.8 cc's testosterone cypionate. That can be shipped to the house. They can administer it from home. They're going to have their follow-up blood done every year, assuming nothing else is wrong. We also do 6 weeks after they start, we do a blood panel to see if they're good. But to answer your question, we do require a one in-person meeting to establish that patient-provider relationship, that hour-long meeting, which I would strongly encourage. I mean, telemedicine's a big thing now, which is great. It's okay, whatever. That hour meeting you have with the provider is just, I mean, I tell everyone who comes out, I'm like, I'm going to tell you with 99.9% certainty, this will be the most extensive review of your blood panel you've ever had done.
Yeah, it is.
In person is probably optimal for that. That's right. You've been through it. So in person is normally optimal for that, I think, personally.
I think it makes sense. And then, so is there anything like upcoming that you're excited about in this field? Like things that are kind of on the horizon that you're excited about?
Everything's longevity right now. I mean, everything is about lifespan versus health span, right? So lifespan is very binary. It's how long you live for. You're alive, you're dead. It's a pretty simple equation. Does not take into account at all your overall health, just how long you live for. Health span is the quality of that life. So it's quantity versus quality. Everything right now is pointing towards doing things that can extend life and not just live longer, but live better for longer. It's like asking somebody, like, do you want to live to your 100 years old? Everybody's like, absolutely. I'm like, okay. One little minor caveat.
As long as I can do my stuff, do things for myself.
What if I told you the last 3 decades of your life, you were bedridden, couldn't feed yourself, couldn't bathe yourself? I'd be like, you know what? 70, I'm good. See you later. So everything right now is really revolving around the whole longevity thing and helping people live longer for better. Me personally, that's where I get extremely excited. It's about having these metrics that now we can determine and predict and try to help people to understand the significance of making very minor changes now to live longer. And the whole lifespan thing just gets totally thrown out. It gets tossed around a lot. But for me, I think it's just all this available information now. Genetic testing has given us that ability internally to really get down to the nitty gritty as far as, everything that you're doing right now might not be the best thing based on your genetic predisposition. 100%. That's extremely exciting to learn about. But I would say personally, it's the longevity thing. I think everything's going to be kind of pushing towards VO2 max is another one. That's a test you can do to determine, there's a very big indicator there for longevity too, about having a high VO2 max. But it's all about education and longevity. Obviously, that's the stuff that really gets me going. And that's not women specific. That's obviously men and women specific.
Yeah.
But anything we can do to educate ourselves to help us live better for longer.
Okay. And any events that LifeMed is hosting soon?
Girl,
Everything?
We're already 3 hours deep. We got another 3 hours for me to go through this list. We do all the things. So
all the things you sure do.
I'm all over. So in summertime down here, especially in Ocean City, I'm going to be here for about 6 weeks straight. We're big in the boating world. We love the boating world.
And you guys are into the white marlin. I've seen you guys there.
White marlin, poor girls, mid-Atlantic, tunas and tiaras, flounder pounder, battle for the buckle. There's like three more, I think. I love the boating community. They're just such cool people.
Oh yeah.
Like I'm not a boater, right? Again, I was in the Marine Corps, whatever. But I'm not a boater. We love being involved. So you'll everything in Ocean City. We got the bus. We
saw it on the bus. Yeah.
Wait till you see the new one, Amanda. We actually got a pink one this year.
Oh, okay.
So we got black and pink. We got the plane that's flying our banner up and down coastal. We have the parachute that we got. So I actually did a video on that last year. We got a parachute for the one of the places. And then we got the boat that's actually in the water floating up and down. We're actually going to be doing an event this September. It's a few months, 8 months away. It's called Evolution in Ocean City. We're actually the title sponsor. I'm coming back down here next month. They're gonna have like a media day type thing. So we're gonna have it's gonna be a huge event at the convention center. We're the title sponsor there, so we're gonna pretty much have a lot of our medical staff there.
Okay.
Probably some of our machines. That's gonna be at the convention center.
Is that like gonna be like a health fair kind of thing, or?
So it's got like electric vehicles and stuff. It's like all these things, but we're gonna be like the whole wellness component of it. And it's gonna be attracting tons and tons of people. There's hundreds of vendors that have already signed up for it. It's gonna be wild. We do a lot of music festivals. We do a lot of food truck festivals. I personally love all the women's events. I love going out to companies or gyms and getting in front of a group of women and helping to educate them. Yeah. So we do a ton of events. Again, I do about an event a day on average. Summertime it gets wild, but I can't get enough of it. I love it. I just love meeting the people.
Yeah. Do you sleep?
A little bit. I don't get a whole ton of sleep. And I got to practice what I preach, because obviously that's a whole other metric that gets totally overlooked, because most people
sleep hygiene's huge.
Sleep is so significant. It's so significant. Unfortunately, I don't always adhere to what is recommended in that department. I feel like I get a decent amount, but I just everything with LifeMed, I had all these different angles and things that happened in my life that led me down this path. But being where I am right now is just, I always heard people say, like, when you love what you do, you never work, whatever. I'd be like, shut up, dude. I'm like really? Okay. And then now I'm in the middle of this and I'm like, that's what they were talking about.
Well, it fulfills you, right? It doesn't feel like work. It fulfills you.
It's the most amazing feeling for me to because again, I'm not a medical person. So to have these people that I meet, and again, especially with the women, to see the improvement to their quality of life. And not that I'm not the one prescribing, I'm not the one making recommendations, whatever, but just to know, I was normally the initial one who met them, who talked to them, and we have lots of very personal conversations.
Well, I think it's also about validation, right? You're validating the things that they're going through to saying yes, this is real. Yes, this is why. And yes, there's a path forward. That's huge.
That's perfectly articulated. And I would totally agree with you. And it's something, again, kind of like a closing message would be to help women to recognize, especially that, menopause is not if, it's when. It will happen.
Right.
And not every woman experiences it the same exact way. It's very person specific. There's a genetic component that comes into play. Don't be alarmed just because your mother might have gone through it a certain way. There's only about a 30 to 40% probability that you will experience it the same way as your mom. So pretty, there's you don't have to worry too much if your mom really struggled with it. And there's lots of things you can be doing to hopefully minimize what happens, but it's not person specific. You will go through this. When you go through it, there most certainly is help available. There are, there's lots of things you can read. There's lots of things you can do. the recommendation is to also talk to other women. This is what I love with my events, because 15, 20, 30 minutes in, the whole room is talking to each other and they're laughing and they're crying or they're doing all these kind of things, because it is collectively something that you all go through.
Right.
So why not open up the conversation? Why not help everyone understand that this is a very normal part of life, regardless of the other 82 people who have told you there's nothing that can be done, regardless of them saying it's a part of life, suck it up and deal with it, regardless of them saying that, hey, it's just part of being a woman. There most certainly are things that you can do. This requires significant amounts of education, number one, but also an understanding that it's not if, it's when. There's 350 million people in this country, 175-ish are going to be women. They're all going to go through menopause. So why not just address the issue? Why not arm the information, make it readily available? Don't require women to go search in 82 different places to find it. Let's make it readily available. Right.
And don't make it hard to find and like it's some kind of like magic potion. Like, you know, I think a lot of people are like, oh, all these supplements, all these things, like, blah, they're not, you know, they're not good for you. But, you know, if it's a simple fix, like, why are we not putting it on the shelves for everybody?
Putting on the shelf is important. And again, educating to put on the shelf. That's everything I talk about. I'm not someone who's going to say every woman should do it, but again, 100% of women are owed that conversation.
Or at least knowing that there's options.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. And the Menopause Marine is on Amazon and in LifeMed stores.
LifeMed for free.
LifeMed for free.
Or anywhere you see me out. I sling them all the time. You can have them.
Slinging books.
It's camouflage though, so you might
not be able to see it in the pink camo, but it's a great resource. So thank you so much for coming on.
Appreciate you having me. Thank you, Amanda. I'm glad to be here. Was the camera on this time, TJ? You got it. Okay, good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.